He walked away from money, from comfort, from a future most people spend their lives chasing, not because he was lost, but because he believed freedom was worth everything. No job, no name, no safety net, just a road and the idea that life becomes real only when you leave society behind. Millions admired him. Others called him reckless. But the real question is this: was he escaping the world or running from something inside himself?
Christopher McCandless didn't leave society overnight. He slowly disconnected from it. A top student, a promising future, parents who expected success to look a certain way. But behind that image, his life felt controlled, dishonest, and suffocating. Money felt fake, titles felt empty, even family love felt conditional. So, he chose rejection. He donated his savings, burned the rest of his cash, cut off his name, and began calling himself Alexander Supertramp. To him, this wasn't rebellion, it was purification. Along the road, he met people who tried to slow him down. A farmer who offered work, a lonely old man who wanted a family, a woman who saw potential, not danger. Each of them represented something human: connection, responsibility, belonging. And each time, Chris walked away. Not because he hated people, but because closeness threatened the freedom he was chasing. Here's where the real conflict begins. The film isn't about nature versus society. It's about idealism versus reality. Chris believed that if he stripped life down to its purest form, truth would reveal itself. No rules, no systems, no compromises. But real life doesn't reward purity, it rewards preparation. As he moved deeper into the wild, his mistakes became quieter, but deadlier. He underestimated isolation, overestimated his knowledge, and ignored one brutal fact: nature doesn't care about your philosophy. This is where the story mirrors many real-life struggles. People quit jobs without a plan, cut relationships to find themselves, reject money without understanding its role as a tool. Not because they're lazy, but because they're tired and hurting. Chris wasn't just escaping society, he was escaping unresolved pain, family conflict, broken trust, emotional rigidity. And the wild became a mirror. The quieter it got, the louder his thoughts became. Hunger stripped away romanticism, loneliness stripped away pride, and survival forced clarity. Freedom without structure slowly turned into vulnerability. By the time Chris realized what he truly needed, the distance between him and people had become too large. The tragedy of Into the Wild is not that he left everything behind. The tragedy is that he learned the right lesson too late.
By this point in Into the Wild, the story stops being about Christopher McCandless. It starts being about us. Because most people don't want to live in the wilderness, but many secretly want to disappear. Disappear from pressure, from expectations, from systems that define success before we do. And this is where the real lessons begin.
Lesson 1. Motivation. Freedom without direction becomes self-destruction. Chris believed that removing everything would reveal truth. No money, no schedule, no obligations. But motivation doesn't survive on ideals alone. In psychology, purpose requires two things: meaning and structure. Chris had meaning, but he rejected structure. And without structure, even strong motivation collapses. This mirrors real life more than we admit. People quit careers searching for passion, but don't build skills in the process. They reject discipline, but still expect fulfillment. They want freedom, but not responsibility. The film quietly asks a hard question. Are you chasing freedom or avoiding commitment to growth? Because freedom is not the absence of limits. It's choosing which limits matter.
Lesson 2. Money. Money is not the enemy. Ignorance is. Chris didn't hate money because he understood it. He hated it because it symbolized control, corruption, and inequality. That emotional reaction is understandable, but it's also dangerous. Money is not morality. It's leverage. When you reject money entirely, you don't become free. You become dependent on luck, on others, on conditions you can't control. In modern life, money equals options. Options to leave bad environments, options to help others, options to recover from mistakes. Chris didn't lack values. He lacked strategy. And many people today repeat this mistake. They romanticize poverty. They demonize wealth. They confuse simplicity with sustainability. The lesson is not chase money. The lesson is don't abandon tools you don't fully understand. Freedom without resources is fragile.
Lesson 3. Life Problems. You can't outrun unresolved pain. One of the most uncomfortable truths of the film is that Chris carried his problems with him. Family conflict, broken trust, emotional rigidity. Distance didn't heal those wounds. Silence didn't fix them. Nature didn't erase them. It only removed distractions. And when distractions disappear, you're left with yourself. This is why isolation feels romantic at first and terrifying later. The mind doesn't become quiet. It becomes louder. Many people today do the same thing emotionally. They move cities, end relationships, change careers, not to grow, but to avoid facing something unresolved. The film suggests a painful truth. Healing doesn't come from escape. It comes from confrontation. Chris didn't need more distance from people. He needed healthier connection with them.
Independence feels powerful until you need help. The closer Chris gets to total independence, the weaker he becomes. Not because he's incapable, but because humans are not designed for isolation. Biologically, psychologically, emotionally. The moment he understands this, he writes the line that defines the entire film. Happiness is only real when shared. That sentence isn't poetic. It's a conclusion earned through suffering. And it reframes the entire journey. The goal was never total freedom. The goal was meaningful connection without losing yourself. That balance, not escape, is the real challenge of life.
Into the Wild doesn't warn us against dreams. It warns us against extremes, against idealism without realism, freedom without preparation, independence without humility. The film asks something quietly devastating. What if the life you're running from is actually the one you're supposed to fix? In the end, Into the Wild isn't a story about nature. It's a story about choice. Christopher McCandless didn't fail because he wanted freedom. He failed because he believed freedom meant doing everything alone. The wild didn't kill him. Isolation did. And that's the part that stays with us. Because many of us are not lost in the wilderness. We're lost in our own lives. running from expectations, from pressure, from versions of ourselves we don't want to become. The film leaves us with one quiet truth. You don't need to escape the world to live honestly. You need clarity, balance, and connection. Freedom isn't found by disappearing. It's built by choosing what and who matters. And maybe the real question isn't, would you do what he did? But this, what are you running from, and what are you afraid to face?